Rabbi, I suppose you've heard this question before. I think it's for the panel. Why do good things happen to bad people?
Why do bad people get away with murder? I have lost track of how many people have urged me to write a book by that title. And my response is, who would buy it? Who would you give it as a present to?
Well, it's too late for Mr. Madoff now, but he would have liked it a year ago.
I would say bottom line is, yeah, it's a very disturbing phenomenon. Most of the time, I think, you don't really get away with anything in this world. You pay for everything you take in this world in one currency or another. The Bernard Madoffs, even if he had not been caught, would have missed out on much of what it means to be a human being. The guy who cheats on his wife and doesn't get caught and thinks he's really clever and he's pulled it off will never know what it really feels like to invest all of your love in a single relationship. You pay for everything you take in life in one currency or another, and sometimes when the bill comes due, you go back and wish you'd played it differently.
Professor, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I once said that the rabbi had given me a wonderful definition of the word envy. I envied his royalties. And there was a sense in which he spoke, and does speak, to the fundamental question that we all ask. But I would write a slightly different book. My book would be, why do good people do wicked things? And the church is full of good people who are tempted and actually sometimes succeed in doing wicked things. Now, my tradition teaches that there's the doctrine of original sin. It sort of explains everything. You're all naturally wicked, and you'll do wicked things unless you're inhibited against them, which provides a very rational theology, but wouldn't preach very well these days, especially, I'm sure, in Hartford, Connecticut. But the fact of the matter is, the greater question for me is people who want to do the right thing, want to be thought of as good and virtuous, often end up doing terrible things. And I think of St. Paul's famous line, the good that I would do, that I do not, and that which I would not do, that I do. That's the human and the moral dilemma. And it seems to me that's the task to which, confession, forgiveness, amendment of life, all of that is directed towards. So that would be my take, but I don't think my book would do as well as Rabbi's book.
Do you want to add anything?
Yeah. There are things that a morally normal, even a very morally average or mediocre person would not unprompted do. For example, hold down their daughter at the age of 6, tear off her underwear, and cut her genitalia with a sharp stone. They wouldn't do that if they didn't think God was telling them to do it, or the mullahs, or if it's a boy, the rabbis weren't telling them to do. One of the reasons why I have the lurid subtitle I do, my book, Religion is a Poison, is that it makes ordinary moral people, compels them, forces them, in some cases orders them to do disgusting, wicked, unforgivable things. There's no expiation for the generations of misery and suffering that religion has inflicted in this way and continues to inflict, and I still haven't heard enough apology for it.
Rabbi, you want to add something?
Christopher, I've got to call you down on referring to circumcision as genital mutilation. My son cried more at his first haircut than he did at his bris. And statistically...
You weren't doing it right then.
Statistically, the only long-term effect that it seems to have on people is it increases their chances of winning a Nobel Prize.
I can't find the compulsory mutilation of the genitals of children a subject for humor in that way, or flippancy in that way. Maimonides says very plainly that it's designed to repress sexual pleasure, to deprive us, a male child as far as possible of the opportunity of that. The full excision, not just the snip or the full mandatory covenant is fantastically painful, leads to trauma, leads to the dulling of the sexual relationship, and can be in itself life-threatening at that moment. We have the records, I can show them to you, of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds in the United States, boy babies who've died or had life-threatening infections as a result of this disgusting practice. That a person as humane as yourself can sit here and think of that as a fit subject for humor shows what I mean. Religion makes morally normal people say and do disgusting and wicked things, and you've just proved my point for me. Shame on you for saying what you just said. Shame on you for saying it about your own son, my God.
Let's move on.
Yes, let's.
What next? Cutting the labia of little girls. At least Judaism doesn't do that.
This is a question.
What if a Muslim was to say to you just now, my little girl cried more at her first haircut than when I cut off her clitoris? What would you think of me if I was to say such a disgusting thing?
Well,
remember, we are not talking about detail here. We're talking about whether religion makes people behave better or not.
let's give the rabbi a chance. I wanted to move on, but let's give the rabbi a chance to respond to what you said, because it got pretty personal here. So,
Again, my experience in my own son, my own grandson, hundreds of congregants, has been that it's not nothing like what you're talking about, and that for whatever reason that this has become an issue for you, I just think is excessive.
What do you mean by that?
Oh.
What do you mean by that?
That I'm more
There
personally...
was an undertone of innuendo to this. Let's bring it on.
No, there's no innuendo there. What I'm saying is,
Sure.
I've lived through this personally, and...
You've inflicted it, is what you're saying.
I've been what?
You've inflicted it or officiated at it, is what you're saying, isn't it?
Well, officiated, yes. Inflicted, no. Forget Maimonides. Maimonides has his hang-ups about
I should
that.
forget Maimonides. Since when do you say that?
Because on issues of sexuality, Maimonides has some very medieval ideas. I ran across the line in your book that Orthodox Jews have sex through a hole in a bedsheet. Do you know Orthodox Jews who told you they have sex that way?
No. I say it is said of Orthodox Jews that they may do that.
all right, gentlemen, I'm sorry to break this up.
That's a Reformed Jewish rumor about Orthodox.
We have a lot of questions from the audience, and I want to give others a chance.
Genital mutilation is no joke.